So we
Right.
are holding in 276 subsection 7, Zayin. Yisraelim v'nachrim sheisibu yachad u'banachri v'dliku lehem ner. So you
I
have,
don't see,
before we were
I don't
talking about,
I don't see Yehuda anywhere.
yeah, he's
I'm
there.
here.
I don't see him.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Gotcha,
So
okay.
so before we were talking about two distinct scenarios. One is if a non-Jew lights turns on whatever, it could be turns on an electric light or makes a fire or turns on a furnace, any of these things, or really this is just the example. It could be any one of the malachas. It could be any forbidden labor. So a non-Jew does a forbidden labor for the benefit of a Jew. So now, unless the it's for a Jew, if somebody's sick, for children, etc., like we said, but generally speaking, if he does it for a Jew, not only that Jew that he did it for, but no other Jew can benefit from it. On the other hand, if he did it for not for himself or to benefit another non-Jew, then it's not a problem because he did not do it for the benefit of a Jew on Shabbos. And then, if a Jew happens to be there, he can benefit from what the non-Jew did, either for his own benefit or to benefit another non-Jew. So now we're going to talk about another scenario. Is what happens if you have a mixed crowd. You have Jews and non-Jews, and they're sitting together, right? They're dining together. And then a non-Jew comes and lights for them a candle. So now the question becomes, did he light it for the benefit of Jews or for non-Jews? So if most of the group is non-Jews, so let's say like before we were using the example of a hotel. So you have a big like hotel dining room, and it's mostly non-Jews, right? It's in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. And it's mostly non-Jews, but over Shabbos, a group of 3-4 Jews stopped, and they're sitting by one of the tables and they're making Shabbos. But most of the people there are non-Jews. So then it's fine. It's considered he did it for the benefit of a non-Jew, and he didn't do it for your benefit. You're fine. You can use this light. If most of the group, if it's mostly Jews there, so for example, if you have like one of those, where the Jews take over a resort or something like that, and you have mostly Jews, but you still have a few guests or whatever who are not, so then it's considered he did it for the sake of a Jew. Because the guy who's lighting it, right, the hotel employee who went and turned on the dining room lights, we can assume that his intention is he's doing it for the crowd as a whole, for the majority of the crowd.
Okay.
So now what if you count the people, you turn around, you count the guy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. You turn around, you count the 10 and 10, it's half and half. Gam Kain Aser. It's also no good because you don't have a majority, so there has to be a majority of non-Jews. If it's equal or less, then it's considered he did it for the Jews. Because at that point, so that means there's no right, there's no majority. So there's no majority. We say his intention was to do it for both, which means he intended to do it specifically for you also. And when you have a doubt as to which one it is, being that he's the lighting, he's doing this malacha. Well, the truth is, it's not a mir l'nachi, but in other words, but since he's doing it for you, and even though I guess when he's doing it, it's not really a minatayr. The minatayr is you're doing it, but still, when it comes to Shabbos, we're more stringent about even the abundance than we would be usually. And so in either case, when it comes to a suffix, by this kind of thing on Shabbos, we go to the stringent, and if it's half-half, we count it like it's a majority Jews, and you cannot use this light. And this is when he's lighting it stamazay, just in a regular situation. That generally speaking, his intention is for those who are sitting and dining. Right? He's opening the lights in the dining room. Our assumption is he's opening it all. He's turning the lights on for the benefit of the diners. In which case, you have to figure out, are most of the diners Jewish or not? But if we have a proof that he's lighting it for himself, like we see that he's using the light, right? Like, for example, let's say he walks in with some kind of a manual. He's trying to figure out how to fix something. It's, let's say a maintenance guy, and he's trying to figure out how to fix this light. And you see he comes, right? It's dim lighting in there. And he comes and he turns on the big lights in the room, and then you see he's leaping to the manual looking to see how to fix it. So he wasn't doing it for the sake of the people who are dining. So it doesn't make a difference who the most of the diners are or not. Clearly, he lit it for himself because he needs to see this manual. So then, Afal P miyad, right away we see, meaning you can see that he's using it. We see immediately; it's immediately obvious. So even though most of the people are Jews, you can use the light because he didn't do it for the diners. And the same would hold true if we have a proof that he's lighting it for another non-Jew, right? So let's say it's not the maintenance man that turns it on. Let's say it's one of the servers that turns it on. But he turns it on, and you see he turns to the maintenance guy and says, "Is that enough light for you to read your manual?" Okay. So clearly he did not light it for the diners, and therefore it doesn't make a difference if the diners are even all Jewish, or half Jewish, or part Jewish, or their mother's Jewish, their father's Jewish. It's all you worry about is he's clearly lighting it for a non-Jew, and he's not lighting it for the benefit of a Jew on Shabbos. So in that case as well, it would be fine. You could use this light. But if you have proof that he's lighting it for the benefit of even one Jew, let's say in this dining room, you can't use it, even if he's lighting it mostly for non-Jews. Right? Like, for example, there's a group of non-Jews who come to fix this light. This is funny. It's turning into how many people does it take to switch a light bulb? But right. but he comes in and you see there, and you see, oh, it looks like he's doing it because they need the manual, they need to see how to fix the light. And then he says, and also the guys by this table can't see nothing. It's too dark in this corner. And right. You happen to know that there's a Jew sitting right by that corner. Boom, he turns it on, problem, because he's doing it. So it doesn't make a difference, even if most of them are non-Jews. So the whole thing of do you go by the most of them? That's when you're making the assumption that he's doing it for the diners. If you don't have any assumption that you're making, you're going based on you have to go based on what the practical proof is. If it's obvious he's doing it only for non-Jews, then it doesn't make a difference, even if most of the diners are Jews. And the other way around, also, if you see that he's doing it for one Jew, you got a problem. You can't use it. Notes.
All right, the notes. So said if most of the participants are not Yidden, so the Yidden are allowed to use the light, benefit from the light. The Mishnah Berurah says that the determination is made at the time the lamp is kindled. So once it's determined the use of the light is permitted or forbidden, the ruling remains in effect even if the ratio of Jews to non-Jews changes. Which is good to know. So basically, at the moment,
what he intended at the time.
Yeah, what was the intention of did he light it on behalf of these Jews on Shabbos or not? That's what matters.
Well, not just that. Imagine everybody in the dining room leaves, and a whole new mixed group of Jews and non-Jews comes in. It doesn't make a difference because the one he lit it for, it was a question of at the time he lit it, did he light it for the Jews that were in the room intention? At the time, or the non-Jews at the time who were in the room? Yeah. Yeah.
So then we said because it can be assumed he kindled it for the sake of the majority. Now, Shulchan Shleima states that other factors should also be considered. For example, is there a particularly important person present whose status is greater than the others? Maybe it's a whole crowd in the hotel room, but the guest speaker is, a Jew, Rabbi Mendel Markel, very important status. That's who they're lighting for. It doesn't matter that there's 600 other people who are or vice versa. Right. Even if the whole crowd's Jews, but they did it for, I don't know, Elon Musk.
Elon Musk.
Or Hillary Clinton. whichever way you swing. Yeah, so it doesn't matter. So modern halachic authorities have used these rulings in connection with questions regarding an entire apartment building heated by one central furnace. Shmir Shabbos Kol Chasa writes that if Jews and non-Jews live in an apartment building and the heating is turned on during Shabbos, the Yid may benefit from it even if the non-Jews are not present. More stringent laws apply, however, with regard to an apartment building shared by observant Jews and non-observant Jews. If the heating is turned on during Shabbos for the sake of non-observant Jews, the observant Jews are forbidden to benefit from it. See Shevet HaLevi, Ber Moshe, and Igros Moshe in volume 1 differs and allows an observant Jew to stay at the home even though the heat was turned on by a non-observant Jew. So seemingly a machlekes there. Yeah, I don't know which way we swing, but
Well, I mean, it might have to do something with the fact that our furnaces are a little bit different than how their furnaces were. Meaning, we already established that the sages will not trouble you to leave your house because it happened, right?
right.
So okay, so
yeah, but leaving house is different from receiving direct benefit. I'm talking about if I want to stand close to the heater and warm up my hands.
So I'm saying maybe what he's talking about is because in our apartment buildings, you don't generally go and like heat your hands up by the forced heat. It's not a usual thing you would do. It's not like a furnace where like when you have a wood stove, right? There's a big difference between the rest of the room and right near the stove. Like, oh, let me come go warm up by the fire. But by central heating, it's not like
it's still something we do.
Mostly heating up the room as a whole, rather than like that there's a fire you can go warm yourself by, and there's definitely no light that you could benefit from.
You know, there's still that we still do that. This just past winter, there were times that I'd come back after walking Shabbos. I wear my Shabbos shoes. They're not as insulated as weekday shoes. Yeah. It was cold, but it wasn't like snow, so I wasn't wearing snow boots. Came back, my feet were cold after a long walk. So I kicked off my shoes and I put my feet by the heating vent that's on the floor.
You're a weirdo.
Okay, I'm saying it happened several times.
Fine. No, but I'm saying the usual use. I think the usual use of our heating systems, and even that, if you put your thing, I don't know, is it?
Made the call.
I guess it's the same as warming your hands by the fire.
I went to go heat up by the fire instead of just in general the room. I'm specifically trying to benefit from the direct heat. That's the issue.
And that's what it implies. It implies that he holds that you can manage benefits from it as opposed to you don't have to leave.
That's what it says.
And what's interesting is a step further. He's talking not even about a non-Jew doing it. Here you have a more stringent thing. You have a Jew who did it. Right? Is that the scenario they're talking about? There's a non-observant Jew.
Yeah. So that's the problem. That it seems. Wow. Well, at least on behalf of the non-observant Jews. I don't know. Yeah, it says the Igros Moshe wording though is different. It's funny. Most of the paragraph was just who it was done for, and it says benefiting from it. The Igros Moshe line says it's different. He allows them to stay at home, even though the heat was turned on by a non-observent Jew.
Wait, but his wording is
different. So
his wording is interesting. Wait, he allows them to stay home. It doesn't say allows them to put their feet in front of it. He's allowing, so meaning that he would hold that even if it was a non-Jew, even if it wasn't a non-Jew, even if it was a non-observant Jew, the sages would still not trouble you to leave your home. That's the implication of that.
Even home, leaving home.
He's saying you don't have to leave. He's not saying you can benefit from it. You can put your feet in front of it.
Otherwise, you'd have to leave. Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. Okay, moving forward. So he said, so if there's evidence that he kindled it for his own sake, so we see that immediately afterwards he made use of the light. So he did it for himself. So the word immediately is added actually in miyad, this in parentheses, it's added because it's only when the non-Jew makes use of the light directly after he kindles it that it is apparent that he kindled it for his own sake. If he makes use of it later, it's possibly kindled it for the sake of the others dining and only afterwards decides to use it for his own purposes. This comes from the Lavush, the Pri Megadim, and the Ishal Abram. Now, the same rule applies if it's evident, it's clear that he's lighting it for the sake of another non-Jew. And from the Kaf HaChaim adds that this leniency applies even when the activity for which the non-Jew kindle lamp does not necessarily require the use of a light. So it's time they lit the light, not for a direct activity, but
right. It doesn't. That's irrelevant to that point. It's just a question of who.
Bottom line is who
did he light it
on?
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
The fact that he was overdoing it, and the guy didn't really need it. Fine, different story. His intention was not to light it for you or another Jew.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Ches.
Ches, b'ktsas mekaymis nagu rabim lahakel b'amidl lenachri lahadik nedis letzedich seuda kishenichbu hanedis. So in some places, the custom has become lenient in instructing a non-Jew to light candles for the need of the Shabbos meal. If the candles went out, and it would be impossible to eat. It's dark enough that you simply can't eat. You can't see the food. And there are those who learn the merit, or like they said it's okay. They justified on this, that the sages did not. It's a funny wording. There are those that justified those sages who did not stop them from doing so. Why? What's the justification? That there's some said that this, because you rely on the opinion that says that you don't make you don't make a decree on a Shavuos. Shavuos is we'll cover in a second, of saying to a guy in the place of a mitzvah. Even when you're telling him to do something that had a Jew done, it would be a full malacha from the Torah. So, meaning, just to go back, if you do a malacha yourself, that a minat Torah thing, something from the Torah that's prohibited, now you were over on a midiraisa. You did a Torah prohibition. Telling a guy to do the same thing is not a Torah prohibition. It's a rabbinical prohibition. Right? Now, usually, you don't add on a rabbinical prohibition, you don't add additional gzeiras, additional decrees on it. It's already there. On Torah prohibitions, you add extra decrees to protect. Not so much on rabbinical ones. However, when it comes to Shabbos, when we on telling a guy, it's called shvus de shvus. It's a rabbinical decree on a rabbinical decree, which, even though we don't usually do it, in this case we do have a shvus de shvus. We have a rabbinical decree on top of another rabbinical decree. Now there is an opinion that we can waive that. We can waive this shvus de shvus in the case of when there's a requirement to do a mitzvah, and as we know that the Seudah Shabbos is a mitzvah, and now it's dark, you cannot do your Seudah Shabbos. It's holding you back from a mitzvah. In which case, there is an opinion that says that in that case we waive the rabbinical prohibition that's on top of the other rabbinical prohibition, and therefore you can tell a guy to do it. Even if he's doing an actual Torah prohibition, because which is interesting, because that's not waiving the shvus, that's waiving the shvus.
Yeah, so I was wondering why you're saying shvus to shvus.
Because here he's saying because here he's saying al shvus, as opposed to saying gazru shvus.
No, it means the way they translate it here. So I'm cheating. I didn't. It's not like I knew this before, but the way they translate it, meaning. They did not gazru the shvus. It doesn't mean al meaning on top of a shvus. It's not a gzeir on top of a shvus.
Okay, so
they mean it in a way of they did not geyser the shvus.
Right. It's a weird wording, but I guess based on what he's saying, you're forced into translating it as basically shlei gazru shvus.
Right. But I guess maybe grammatically that doesn't work that way. Maybe because the way it's like, meaning, maybe you can't say gazru shvus. It has to be al shvus, meaning
because a shvus, the shvus would be in a case where would be in a, just to clarify the reason why it's whether it's a shvus or shvus the shvus is that if we're only canceling the shvus that's on top of a shvus, then we would only be canceling out. We would only be allowing you in this case to tell a non-Jew to do something that's a rabbinical prohibition. You wouldn't also be allowed to tell him to do something that's a Torah prohibition. Because if you're telling a non-Jew to do something that's a rabbinical prohibition, which you're also not allowed to do, although it's more lenient actually. Then it would be on the shvus the shvus. In this case, it's only one shvus because you're telling it's a Torah prohibition, and you're telling the guy to do it, that's the shvus. So okay, so meaning even the whole rabbinical decree of saying to a guy is waived in the case of a mitzvah. Is what this opinion holds. However, still, okay, he doesn't. So far, he doesn't actually say how he holds regarding that. But okay, he'll probably get to that. He says in some places they have this minhag, and here's how it's justified. So still, if one candle is lit and you can technically eat there, right? Because the whole point is that it's so dark that you can't do the mitzvah. That's according to this opinion. That's why you're allowing it. So you can't tell him to light more of them. She'ein kan mitzvah. There's no mitzvah that you're allowing to be fulfilled, because with the one candle you can already do the mitzvah. So you no longer have that need for the sake of the mitzvah. You don't have a mitzvah so much, meaning because you can already do the mitzvah, that you're going to push off because of it the rabbinical decree of saying of telling a non-Jew to do a prohibition. However, if he lit it by himself, you can benefit, unlike usually with this. So he's saying you don't have that leeway of telling him to do it. But however, there is a certain leeway that you do have that you wouldn't otherwise have, which is that if he did it by himself, you can benefit from it, even after the first one goes out. Meaning, so you can't even say that I'm benefiting from that one that was okay. I'm not really benefiting from the other ones. I'm benefiting from the one that was okay. So you can't say that because that one went out. But you can still benefit from them. Because the pleasure of Shabbos is hinging on this, like you said. However, every person, now the Alter Rebbe is saying what should we do? We should be stringent, and the person should not tell a non-Jew to light a candle, even if he's sitting in the darkness. And he can't eat the Shabbos meal because it's the more prevalent opinion is that even in the case of a mitzvah, you're not allowed to it doesn't cancel out the shvus, the rabbinical decree. Ella shvus the shvus. It only cancels out a rabbinical decree on a rabbinical decree. So that's like what I was saying before, is in the case so now what Dr. Rebbe is saying, in the case it's a Torah prohibition. So that's why he's saying a candle. You can't have him light a candle because that's a Torah prohibition. And even if it's required for a mitzvah, we do not we do not cancel out a rabbinical decree for Shabbos. The only one we do cancel out is a rabbinical decree on a rabbinical decree, and even that's for the sake of a mitzvah. So let's remember, it doesn't mean you can just do this. That means if you're sitting in the dark and you literally can't have your Shabbos Suda, and there's something you can do about it that's not a Torah prohibition, but rather it's a rabbinical prohibition. So now it's only a rabbinical prohibition, and then on top of that you have the additional rabbinical prohibition of not telling a non-Jew to do it. So then the place of a mitzvah does cancel it out. So interestingly, in such a case, according to those that switching on a light on Shabbos is a Torah prohibition, you would not be able to ask a guy to do that in the place of a mitzvah. According to those that hold that switching on a switch is only a rabbinical prohibition, in the case of a mitzvah, you would be able to ask a non-Jew to switch that on Shabbos, like will be explained. Siman Shin Zayin in 307. With Divrei Ikar, and this opinion is the primary opinion, meaning the primary the Alter Rebbe is ruling that the primary opinion is that only by a shvus to shvus, only telling a non-Jew to do a rabbinical prohibition gets waived when there's a mitzvah need, when it's required to do a mitzvah, but you cannot ask him to do a Torah prohibition for that need. So that's the Alter Rebbe's ruling. And therefore, we should not be lenient on this, even in a big need. And by the way, this is an important thing that he's telling us here, because what happens is sometimes when you have to paskin something for Shabbos, right? So the question is, wait a second, there's a big need. So even though the Alter Rebbe primarily holds like this opinion, but can I, in a case of great need, can I go by that other opinion? Well, here the Alter Rebbe says, no, you cannot go by that other opinion, even in the case of great need. Rather, just that those that hold by that opinion, you don't have to stop them, right? You don't have to go tell them to stop doing it. Shemutav sheyu shoygigim v'ayu mezidin, because it's better that they should be doing it they should transgress unknowingly rather than knowingly, which is an interesting concept. I'm guessing there's going to be a note on that, because it's like if I see you doing something on Shabbos you're not supposed to do, I won't tell you, because it's better you should transgress unknowing. But I guess it's different, because if I would tell you that it's a problem on Shabbos, you would stop doing it, so you don't have that issue.
So the only note, the note is just basically saying the mazid is, we're talking about after having been informed and admonished, right? So that's what we mean by mazid. So he was warned, he was told, and
we're worried that in this case the people will still be doing it. So better to not have warned them. Okay.
Yeah,
any other notes for this?
You actually covered, I think, the other notes about which was in Shavuos. What? You're mechaven to them, the one thing I wanted to point out was earlier when we talked about, there are those that hold a shvus even for deiraisa, to emphasize the fact that, remember, many authorities consider electricity or heater to be
interesting
deiraisa. So such things. But again, one of the things about the mitzvah of the meal, one of the notes pointed out that additional light increases the Shabbos pleasure, but the fundamental mitzvah of having a Shabbos meal, you could do that without having additional lights, technically. So that's just one of the points I want to point out. All right, Tess, actually, let me just, take a quick break. My wife is trying to call me quickly to wish good Shabbos with the kids.
Okay, good.
Let me just take a quick commercial break, and
very good. I'm gonna fine. You take you break. I'm gonna just mention something else in the meantime on this general Indian. But it's interesting to note over here. You have to. Are you talking, Ira? Are you talking to me over here? Here, unmute. Unmute. Hit your muting, the unmute button.
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
The question I have: how much more material do you guys have to go through?
Oh, a lot. We've just, this is the tip of the iceberg. We're only doing Chazar. We're only doing a review of the because first of all, before this, you have to first do it in the regular Shulchan Aruch of Yosef Cairo.
No, for your test for Sunday.
Oh,
for your test on Sunday?
No, a lot more. We're only about halfway through our reviewing.
Did you already review it once before, or
First you have to do it. The different people do it different. First you have to do it in the actual Shulchan Aruch, meaning not the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, but Yosef Karo's Shulchan Aruch, and you have to do it with the Taz and the Magen Avram commentaries. Okay, then what some people do, I don't know that everybody does this, but I think everybody should do this, because then it's worthwhile learning it with the Mishnah Brura, because the Mishnah Brura, which is the Chafetz Chaim, he adds a lot of interesting points and brings a lot of opinions that aren't necessarily mentioned when you're doing it like just in the regular Shulchan Aruch. So that's another good review.
Now, the question is, how much more do you have to cover before?
A lot.
How much more do you have to cover?
We're about 2/3 of the way through.
Wow, you think you're going to be able to cover? I hope you cover it all.
Well, we're both in Crown Heights, so we're going to continue over Shabbos.
Good for you.
So I just want to mention something interesting is that when you have situations, just to give an idea of in other words, why is it important to have a full knowledge of all these things? Because you have people whose lives are relying on certain things, and they have certain issues that come up. And as a Rav, it's not just a matter of knowing when to tell them what they're not allowed to do. It's also a matter of sometimes when people are in a tight situation for one reason or another, to be able to know when can you be lenient. In other words, it's not. In other words, again, not that you want to always try to be lenient, but ask Ben. I don't know. He usually does it. But sometimes if somebody's ill or something like this, whatever it is, various situations. Now, of course, when somebody's ill, we learned already that you're allowed to tell a guy straight out to do it anyway. But just as an example, there's different things that where as a Rav you would be looking specifically to find the most lenient way for the people to be able to do it. So one good example here is the Alter Rebbe says here that let's say we're talking about lights, right? About electric lights. So we said that he already says that you cannot go by the opinion that for the need of a mitzvah, you override the rules of telling a non-Jew,
right,
do a Torah prohibition. You even in a great need, you cannot override that, right? But then right, meaning obviously in a case of great need. So then a Rav might look at another idea. Wait a second. So I can't override him I can't rely on the opinion that overrides him doing a Torah prohibition. However, now there's another consideration. In this case of great need, for a mitzvah, are we able to adopt the opinion that turning on an electric light is a derabanan, and not a minat Torah? So there's a lot of these different things. This is why it's important to know all the different, not just the rulings, but to know all the different things that come into the rulings, and when according to the Alter Rebbe, which things or not even Alter Rebbe, because electric lights is out. It was a conversation after the Alter Rebbe. There was no electric lights for the Alter Rebbe, but understanding when, what are all the different aspects, and in which aspects are you allowed to be lenient for the sake of a mitzvah, and which are you're not allowed to, which you can. So anyway, just pointing out that thing. Okay, so are we up to Tess?
Yes.
Tess. So now we said that according to the Alter Rebbe, we cannot even rely, even in a great need for a mitzvah, we cannot rely on telling a non-Jew to do a Torah prohibition, and therefore we cannot have a non-Jew light a candle if we're sitting in the dark. However, and I guess this is on the lines of what we're just saying. Wait a second, you have to think about this. There's other possibilities here. However, to tell there are those that permit to tell a non-Jew to bring a light, right? That was already lit somewhere else, meaning and to move that light to here. So he's not lighting a light. Here it's not an issue of havara. It's not an issue of lighting. Here it's an issue of muktzah. So now it's a different issue that you're telling him to do. And some say you can do this. Even in a case that he could manage without it. Whether it is a candle that's made out of wax or fats, like whale fats or these kind of things that they make candles out of, or sometimes it can be moose fat or whatever it is. Whatever. I don't think there were so many moose in Russia necessarily, but I don't know. Whatever fat animal was in Russia. I don't know. Bear fat.
Is Yehuda back?
Yeah, or if it's a candle of oil. Why? Because here, look, there's this. Why? Because carrying the candle is not a problem of lighting a candle, but rather it's a problem of carrying muktzah, right? Like it explains in 279. And something that's muktzah can be carried in a way that's an irregular sort of way. Like minatzad literally means from the side, but meaning like something that you'd usually carry on the top and you're carrying it on the side, meaning you're carrying it in a way that's irregular. Like it explains in 3:11. Since the Jew himself would be able to bring the candle if he brings it in a like an irregular method, like using the back of his hands, or he puts like his elbows and picks it up with his elbows like this.
At 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, I got to start getting ready for Shabbos.
All right, not a problem. Not a problem. You'll stay on till when you. By the way, you're delayed. What time is Luke mentioned? Well, I haven't heard any sirens yet. So.
It's 8:35 here. Are you there? Is your family with you, Mendel?
Yeah.
Candle lighting here is 8:13.
Okay.
Is your family with you?
Yeah.
They all came up. I had no idea. Okay, good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not my whole family is with me. That's with me. Meaning,
is your wife with?
Meaning, in the first place, my whole family is usually not with me.
Is Ashley with you?
My daughter's married. One of my boys is here. One's in California.
Is your wife with you? Is your wife with you, Ashley?
Yeah, she is with me, and both of my girls. Well, all three of my girls now because I'm staying by my oldest girl. So.
All right.
Yeah. So since he himself could have brought it in such a way, right? And similar. So in such a case that you could have brought it in a strange way yourself, in that case you're allowed to tell a non-Jew to do it even in a not strange way. That the whole prohibition of telling a non-Jew to do something is specifically by things that there's no permitted way for the Jew to do it himself. And by the way, the logic behind this is, let's remember that a non-Jew he's allowed to do a malacha if it's for his own benefit. He's not allowed to do it for your benefit. So in this case, the fact that you were able to bring it The only difference is you would have to bring it in a strange way, right? Now you tell the non-Jew to bring it, and he's bringing it in a regular way. Whose benefit is he bringing it in a regular way for? He's bringing it for his own benefit in a regular way, because it benefits him to not start picking up the candle with his elbows, and it's beneficial. He's doing it for his own benefit. Let me just pick it up and bring it. Well, you want me to pick it up like this and whatnot? That's his own benefit. He's doing that for. Maybe there's other logic behind it, but that's the. I forget where I saw it. I think in some introduction in Mishnah Brewer or something like that. But that's the logic behind it. Is the fact that he's doing it in a regular way. That aspect of it he's doing for himself, not for you. And since you would have been able to bring it, so he can bring it even if he does it in a regular way. That he's not doing that for you. However, we should not give this. We should not tell anybody. However, we should not tell anybody about this, unless they are people who essentially know halacha. But we should not let unlearned people in on this secret that they could tell a non-Jew to do it. Why? Because this whole thing, it's a very specific case, right? And you're going to tell him he can do it, and he doesn't understand how Hilchos Shabbos works, and he's going to think, the rabbi told me you can tell a non-Jew to carry this stuff. He's missing that. No, it's only in the case of because it was a tzedek mitzvah. He's missing the case that it's only when there's a permissible way for you to do it. He's missing all the fine points of it, and he's gonna walk away thinking, I'm telling you, my rabbi told me. He's a known rabbi, and he said I can tell a non-Jew to do it. And by the way, this is it's not just this is a common sort of thing. Right? Because how often do you hear people saying like, I'll just hint to my neighbor to turn my lights on. There is no heter to hint to your neighbor to turn your lights on. If in other words, either he can do it or he can't do it. There are certain things where we're hinting at something to do with something. But generally speaking, you can't just go tell your neighbor and hint them. Hey, by the way, my lights are off. And then they come and turn it on for you. You have a problem. They just did a malacha for you. Now you can't benefit from it.
Wait a minute, Herschelin. He used to have it set up. He used to have it set up where all he had to do was knock on his Gentile neighbor's door, and he already knew. We don't know exactly what his Rav told him in that case. We don't know what the exact situation was. So again, this is exactly the point the Alter Rebbe is making here. Is you don't tell people to do this, because then somebody will say, but he already knew in advance what he needed.
But I'm saying no, but even if a guy knows in advance, that doesn't. If my neighbor knows in advance that's what I want when I knock on his door, he's still doing it for me. It's the same problem. Now, again, in that case, we don't know what the specifics were. So I'm assuming he asked the Rav, and the Rav told him in this case, do it this way. But again, the problem with that is, and this is why we have to be very careful with these things, is then somebody else can say, I saw he knocked on his neighbor's door and they did it for him. So obviously you're allowed to do it that way. No, you're not. Now again, in his case, I'm sure he asked the Rav, and there was a very specific need that there was, and whatever it was, and therefore he's able to do it.
I'm not sure.
You have to be very careful with these things, because generally speaking, you cannot have, even if you arranged it before Shabbos, you cannot have a guy, and not only that, even if you didn't arrange it and he went and did it by himself, you cannot benefit from a malacha that a non-Jew does for you on Shabbos. Period, unless there is, not period, comma, unless there is someone sick or children. By the way, he might have had small children at the time is another thing that needed something or another, whatever it is.
Real quick, 33 years ago, I was going to share a tower at the beginning, and it was Shabbos day, and the janitor, all the lights were out. It was dark. Rabbi Lieutenant says to me, "What do I was spaghetti. I know Gornish." He says, "Ira," he says,
go out and find a non-Jew to come in and turn the lights on, but you can't let them know that we need the lights on. I said, okay. So people were walking up. I said, are you Jewish? Yeah, Jewish. Yeah, Jewish. No. I said, I need your help. He said, well, what's wrong? I said, I can't. Come on in. I'll show you. So I had to try to walk him all the way upstairs and I said, for some reason, it's dark in here, And he says, and he goes and he sees the switch panel. He said, well, why did you just turn on the lights? I said, oh.
But that again, I don't know the exact situation in which the rabbi allowed this. But generally, generally we can't do that because the fact is the non-Jew is turning it on for the Jew. Anytime even if the non-Jew were to walk in and you didn't tell him anything and he goes, man, it's dark in here. Why don't you turn the lights on? And he turns the light on. There's a problem.
Well, then why did Rabbi Kodenik say to me
again? So that's exactly the point that the Alter Rebbe is making here. The point that the Alter Rebbe is making here is that's why we should not tell people to do that. Why? Because okay, Rabbi Kodenik knows the halacha, so he knows in which case and for what reason and for what purpose you are allowed to do it, which is very specific, and in which case you're not allowed to do it. Now somebody else will go and say, no, listen. You're allowed to tell a non-Jew to come, and you're allowed to just tell him, hey, it's dark in here, because I saw Rabbi Kodenik did it. Yeah, but you don't know we don't know the exact situation under which he did it. A, we don't know which place can be held by. B, we don't know. There's a lot of
right.
So therefore, the bottom line is, and by the way, like it says, what is it when in doubt? Something
do without.
Do without. Yeah, so when it comes to telling a Jew or even hinting to a Jew or even him walking in and doing it, whatever it is, if you are not very, very, very certain, in other words, if you're not very well versed in these halachas, don't do without it better.
That's what I say.
It's very easy to trip up in these halachas,
right? And
so better to not to do without it.
Sit in the dark.
I'll 18 minutes after. I'll do it after. Okay. So anyway, notes.
Okay, 2 minutes to do notes on this. No. Okay, so basically, at the beginning we said that it doesn't matter whether it's beeswax, tallow, or oil. There's an added difficulty with an oil lamp because when it's carried, the shifting of the oil will cause it to either be partially extinguished or to burn brighter. So thus involving the two forbidden labors of extinguishing and kindling. Nevertheless, even if one maintains that it's an inevitable result, what's called a psik resha, like when you chop the head of a chicken off its body, it automatically dies. So this is inevitable of carrying the lamp. License is granted to have a non-Jew perform an activity that a Jew would be permitted to perform, even though a scripturally forbidden labor will be performed as an inevitable result, since this was not the non-Jew's intent. Okay, next note. So we said, as we see in Shin Yud Aleph, in that source, the Alter Rebbe distinguishes between carrying an object by hand and carrying it with other parts of his body. The whole thing, do it with a shinoi, as is commonly talked about. So we said, but nevertheless, this lenient ruling should be imparted only to a learned person. Because when asking a non-Jew to perform such a forbidden activity, the Jew may not directly instruct him to perform it. Instead, a hint should be given by which the non-Jew will understand the action he's expected to perform. And that's.
Just by the way, this was the subject of one of Rabbi Lukovsky's shiurim. Was why is psik resha allowed by a guy? The bottom line is the malach is happening. And because what it comes down to is that Amir L'Nachri, just in a nutshell, Amir L'Nachri is it's specifically that you're not allowed to tell him to do something that's forbidden. But the thing you're telling him to do in and of itself is not an issue. The psik resha is on a malacha that might happen on the side. So therefore, being that his intent, like you just said, his intent is not that malacha, so it doesn't make a difference that it's psik resha because he's not your shliach for putting out or turning on the light. He's only your shliach for moving it, which is permitted. So since he's only your shliach for the permissible thing, what happened with the other with it going with it possibly going out or whatever it is not part of your shlichus to him. So that's just a worthwhile thing to
okay. I got to run.
801.
Let's stop going. Let's go off of being live.
Okay, so let's stop live.